Hey there, welcome into the College Basketball Bracket Science YouTube channel and podcast network. Today we're going to be talking about future bets that are worth placing. Now, for those who are new to the channel, people who have been here for a while kind of know how I lean in terms of betting, especially future bets. I like to get a lot of bang for your buck. You know, for example, like Nebraska was just plus 25,000, I believe, to win the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying Nebraska is going to win the NCAA tournament, but at plus 25,000, there's a chance you can build up your cash out value as well. So that's kind of the way I lean into it. I'm not a big, future bet guy of, you bet five, you win five back. Like, for example, Michigan's plus like 400 in some betting markets right now. I don't like that whatsoever. I think Michigan's the best team in the country. However, at plus 400, those odds just aren't worth it. So that's kind of how I lean into it. Now, there are going to be some bets on here that are going to be even money bets because DraftKings is doing a thing of like over under conference wins. So we are going to talk about a couple of those. That there's three that I really like that we're going to talk about. But we're probably going to talk about a total of 15-ish bets, and most of them are going to be coming from the Power Conference because a lot of the mid majors actually they're not even available on a lot of these sports books, and I do like a lot of some of the Power Conference odds. So we're not going to be looking at for example, we're going to start in the ACC like a Duke at minus like 170. If I had a gun to my head and had to pick who's going to win the ACC, I would probably pick Duke. However, at minus 170, it's just not really worth it. So we're going to talk a lot about that. If you're into betting stuff and all kinds of college basketball podcasts, be sure to like and subscribe to the show, whether that's on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or both, or all three. Do that if you can, please. And follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Bracket Science with 2 S's. All right, let's dive right into it. We said we're going to start in the ACC. That is true. Our first bet is going to be North Carolina to win the ACC because they're plus 1,700 over on FanDuel right now. Now, Duke is your favorite. Like I said, minus 115. I'm never going to hate on anyone for betting that at minus, 115. It's pretty much even money. They're the heavy favorite. However, they were the heavy favorite a couple years ago when North Carolina ended up being a 1 seed and won the regular season ACC. North Carolina seems to have some real things going for them. Their front court's awesome. Caleb Wilson, Henry Vasar. I think that can shut down Duke's front court. And I think Duke is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I'm curious to see the long-term success of this team because this is crazy to say about a Duke team, especially with what's looking like it's going to be the player of the year. I think their ceiling's a little bit limited this year just with their guard play. North Carolina, I think, has a legit chance. I think they're definitely top 3. I don't know why they're technically 6th at FanDuel in the betting odds. Seth Trimble should also be coming back at some point, unless I missed something and he's out for the season. But I think the schedule also kind of aligns for North Carolina. They're obviously going to play Duke away and at home. They only get Louisville at home. They only get Clemson at home. Now they will play at, NC State, at Virginia. However, I think NC State and Virginia are beatable on the road. I don't know if Louisville is, Louisville would definitely be favored over North Carolina if the game was being played at Louisville. But yeah, I think at plus 1,700, $5 brings in 85. That seems worth it to me. $10 brings in 170. I like North Carolina at plus 1,700. We're going to stick in the Power Conference and we're going to go to the SEC. Now I'm just going to put this graphic up for watching on YouTube. What stands out in this graphic? So Vanderbilt is favored. Arkansas is plus 1,100 to win the SEC. If you were to tell me right now who's the best team in the SEC, I said it on our last show, I would pick Arkansas. Arkansas, started off a little bit sluggish to start the season. They picked up, they picked up that loss at Michigan State by 3, and I was like, Arkansas is more talented than Michigan State. However, Michigan State is turning out to be a really good basketball team, as we should have expected. They also lost that neutral site game to Duke. Arkansas actually led in that game. They won against Louisville. They beat them at home or at Arkansas. They beat Texas Tech on a neutral the other day. This team's got real firepower. I don't know why they're not pictured as, I think they're the favorite to win the SEC. If you had to, the SEC, let's just say, is probably the conference, at least the Power Conference, that is just most up for grabs. Like there's, a lot of teams that can win it. However, why is Kentucky favored over Arkansas to win? I know they're higher at KenPom, but Kentucky has proven they can't really beat anyone. Arkansas has proven they can compete with the best and can beat some of the best teams in the country. Tennessee, I'm a little bit, I'm fading Tennessee a little bit. Actually, I did bet Tennessee against Louisville, which actually worked out, but I think Tennessee's long-term success can be a little bit fluctuated. Alabama, Florida, and Vanderbilt are all definite options, I would say, to win the SEC. I would have them right there, probably about plus 350 if I was doing a sports book. I would also have Arkansas right there, and I would probably have Arkansas as the favorite to win the league. So plus 1,100, that's crazy value. $10 wins you $110 for a team that, looks the part and could be the best team in the SEC. Yeah, I'm going to take that 100% of the time. All right, next up, we're going to move to the A10. This one, I'm not as high on North Carolina and Arkansas. I like those two bets a lot better. However, I am going to go with St. Louis, only at plus 230. I think they're just the clear best team in the A10 right now. One of these other teams is actually, we're going to do 2 picks in the A10. So 2 ways to kind of go at it, because I do think 2 teams are going to really separate. So St. Louis, for those who aren't paying attention, is up to 37th in the country at KenPom right now. Their lone loss came to Stanford. And that was the game where, they fouled up 3, as, most coaches will say you should do. And Stanford made the first free throw and missed the second free throw on purpose, kicked it out to the corner for like a heave shot that almost touched the ceiling, a rainbow that ended up going in. So a lot went right. Had that not happened, we're talking about St. Louis being 11-0. They're 10-1 on the season. Robbie Avila is still there. They're climbing the ranks. They started the season 65th at KenPom. They're all the way up to 37th, as we mentioned. So this team's really good. Their schedule is a little bit favorable. However, what I will say is on January 7th, which will be their second game in A10 play, they play at VCU. So if you want to bet this now or not, if they lose that game at VCU and this, these odds spike up a little bit to like plus 300, that would be even better, because I do think St. Louis is definitely the best team in the A10. All right, we are going to stick in the A10, and we are going to talk about Dayton. Now I'm going to pull up another graphic, because Dayton, I have it plus 700, which you can find on BetMGM. St. Louis was on FanDuel. Dayton to win the A10 at plus 700. Dayton has some serious firepower. This team is a dark horse team to make a little bit of a run in March Madness, though they lost at Cincinnati real early in the season. I always give a little bit of leeway with teams that lose games early in the season. Losing at Cincinnati, okay. They hung with BYU the entire way in the ESPN Events Invitational, ended up losing that game by 4. They lost to Virginia by 13, which was a little bit like, I'm not sure. However, this team has the firepower to put up, 85 points plus every single night. They just beat Florida State 97-69. I wouldn't lean into that too much, because I think Florida State sucks and their defense is awful. They play a big game against Liberty at home. When you're listening to this, it would be tomorrow. So on the 20th. So that'll be kind of a big test. They're actually favored by 9 in this game at KenPom. However, Liberty is a really good mid-major team. So I would kind of get a little bit of a feel on that one. Wait for that game and then maybe bet them at plus 700. I think that's good value for a team that is just as talented. I don't think VCU is going to win the conference this year. That's just going to be a take of mine. Same with George Washington. I think George Washington's good. George Mason has gotten a lot of hype because they've won a lot of games to start the season. However, I don't think they're going to win a conference as well. I think it'll be St. Louis or Dayton, and Dayton at plus 700. I think that's pretty good odds. All right, now we're going to move into some of those even money bets, sort of even money that is strictly on DraftKings. This is a DraftKings one. So you're going to see a little bit of similar bets in some of these for, you'll be able to tell some teams I'm a little bit higher on, and some teams I'm, feeling like they can actually do some damage in their conference play. Arkansas's regular season wins for the conference play over 10.5 is what I'm going to go with. Conference wins for Arkansas. It's minus 105. So you're pretty much going to get your money back. This is saying that they're going to go 11-7 in the SEC. I do not think that's hard to ask for at all, because this SEC is going to be down a little bit this year. It's still probably the deepest league in the country. They have 7 teams inside the AP poll top 25 right now, which is more than anyone in the entire any other conference. However, I think it's Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Florida, and Alabama that are going to be vying to win the SEC. As I mentioned, at plus 1,100 to go 11-7. Yeah, I think I like that. I really like that bet. I would be very surprised if Arkansas ends up going 10-8 this season. And at, pretty much even money, I'm going to bet that every time. All right, next up, this one might surprise some people. Michigan's regular season win total in the Big Ten. I'm going to go under 17.5 conference wins. Just expecting a team to run through the Big Ten, which might be the best conference in college basketball. I mean, it's probably the Big 12 and then probably the Big 10, then SEC this season. If you're expecting them to go 18-2, that is a lot to ask. Like, I'm going to pull up their schedule as we're talking right now. Now, yes, they have separated themselves. They've been absolutely fantastic. 18-2 is ridiculous. So let's talk about their schedule a little bit here. They're going to have to play now we're just going to label their away games where, they have a chance of losing. Now they do have sort of a favorable schedule. They're going to have to play at Purdue. They're probably going to be an underdog in that game. You got to play at Michigan State. You're probably going to be an underdog in that game. And you also are going to play at Illinois, at Iowa, two teams that look like, legit top 6 seeds come March Madness time. The Big Ten is just an absolute gauntlet. You're going to have to play Ohio State. You're going to have to play Nebraska. You're going to have to play Northwestern, UCLA. You're going to have to play Michigan State at home as well, again, other than just the road game. You've got, Oregon, at Washington, and some West Coast swings. Expecting them to win 18 games. I know this team is awesome, but that is a ton. 18-2. If they go 18-2, that means they would be what? They're probably going to beat LaSalle and McNeese, so they'll probably be 12-0 going into Big Ten play. So that would be saying they're going to go 30-2 in the regular season. I know this team's awesome, but they're going through one of the best conferences in college basketball. They are going to play a notable neutral site game on the 21st as well against Duke. So that'll be a real fun one. Saturday, February 21st. So just a little break in Big Ten action. But if they win 18 games, hat tip to them. I would not put it likely. I would not put that favored at all. So plus 100, I'm betting under 17.5 conference wins for Michigan. Now we're going to go back to talking about the Tar Heels. North Carolina's regular season wins in conference play in the ACC. I'm going to go over 11.5. So that is projecting them to go 12-6 in conference play. Like I said, we talked about them enough already. If they go 11-7 in the ACC, which the ACC is better this season, I would be very shocked. I think this team's awesome. They're ranked top, what are they, 11th or 12th in the AP poll? They're like 11th or 12th by me. Pretty much every ranking you'll find them has them top 15. I think this is a really good basketball team. It's a completely different team than last year's team. I think last year's team just left a sour taste in people's mouths. At plus 105 to go at least 12-6 in the ACC. Yeah, give me that 100% of the time. All right, next up, we're going to talk about national championship future bets that are worth placing. We only have a couple, and then we are going to talk about some Final Four bets. However, we're going to do a quick ad, so we'll be right back. Hard to find affordable golf instruction. For example, let's take a look at this man's swing. Pulling the club head a little bit inside his line instead of working his hands up the plane is causing a little bit too much turn at the top. You can see his club shaft pointing way to the right, which forces that club to come in steeper than it should, hands a little too far away from the body instead of being in the slot, which will force a little bit of early extension here to get the club path back on target. For just $10, you can get a swing review just like this. Follow Brandon Jadich Golf and send a DM that says Bracket Science for just a $10 swing review. It's all you need. You don't need to spend $100 on a lesson. Just get your swing review and fix it yourself. Alrighty, let's talk national championship winners. So as you can see, this is via FanDuel. The best odds in general I've seen for future bets has been on FanDuel, which usually it seems to be on Caesars. However, I've found a lot better odds on FanDuel. Like you can see, Michigan's plus 450. That's hard to take. Like that is just like that's not enough value for me, in my opinion. Like I said, I have them ranked number 1. I think they're the best team in the country. I would have Arizona right there as well. I think Arizona can beat anyone. Arizona, to me, we'll see. I'm like their ceiling is definitely national championship. Like they can do it. However, I'm a little bit higher on their floor. Same with Duke. I'm a little bit higher on their floor. Other teams that I think can actually win the national championship, where these two that I'm going to give you 2 bets here. I think it's just the best you're going to get them at right now is I'm going to start with UConn at plus 1100. I think they're going to end up climbing up into, the triple digits, not the quadruple digits. I am not going to be surprised if they end up at like plus 700 going into the NCAA tournament, maybe even better, because I think this team's an absolute juggernaut and they're getting healthy and they might not lose a game in the Big East. Seton Hall always seems to pick them off, and Seton Hall's pretty good. St. John's will probably get them, but I would expect how many games they play in the Big East. I think they play 20, 18-2. Like this is a team that like the Big East is not very good this season. The Big Ten's loaded, and that's saying Michigan's going to go 18-2. Going back to our last bet, that's hard. UConn, I think, will probably go 18-2. So I think this is going to be your best odds that you can get them at. And then just another team that people have kind of written off and kind of forgotten about. I also think this is going to be your best value. There's a real shot that Houston wins the Big 12. Houston to win national championship at plus 1,600. I think this is going to be the best value that you're going to be able to find. Wouldn't be surprised if, they end up going, how many games they play in the Big 12? They keep changing them, and I can't forget. We'll say 18, I think. They go 15-3 in the Big 12, and they're like, oh, yeah, Houston, your favorite to win the national championship yet again. They're going to continue to get better. There's not going to be a team, in my opinion, in the country that gets better throughout the season than Houston and turns into that national championship contender. If you notice, going back to our previous segment in terms of conference betting, I didn't put anything for the Big 12 because Iowa State's actually favored to win the Big 12. I would lean Arizona, in my opinion. I almost put that on there, but I wasn't real confident in it because I do think Houston can also win the Big 12, and they're, not that far behind these other two schools. And then BYU actually has a really favorable conference schedule that I think could also sneak up in there. So, you got 4 teams. That's why I didn't end up including it. However, I think Houston, Arizona, and Iowa State, all legit national championship threats. However, I think Iowa State might be towards the peak of what you're going to get value-wise for them. So I wouldn't recommend betting them at plus 1,100. Houston at plus 1,600. I think that's just going to keep getting better or worse for better's sake. All right, now let's talk about Final Four odds. Now, these are, like I said, I like to go with a lot of long shots. I'm not going to go with, like, Michigan's minus money to make the Final Four. That's not worth it to me. It is so hard to make a Final Four. So here's what I'm going to go with right here. I'm going to go with North Carolina plus 850 to make the Final Four, just because I think that's pretty good value. Arkansas plus 1,000, so you can see which teams I'm a little bit higher on. And then I'll keep this up for now. Virginia plus 2,500 to reach the Final Four. I think that's also pretty good odds for a team that just kind of has the pieces and kind of the build and makeup to reach a Final Four and be, a team that's a 5 seed and makes the Final Four. I think Virginia could be that team. And then just going with some complete long shots. These are like, bet them if you want. They're not even on the graphic. However, yeah. We'll see. Georgia at plus 5,000, Seton Hall at plus 8,000, USC at plus 6,500, Oklahoma plus 10,000, Dayton plus 12,000. These are looking for, you see an 8 or 9 seed that beats a 1 seed. You see, a 7 seed that makes a deep run. Georgia seems to have a ton of offensive firepower. Seton Hall is still kind of an unknown. However, they passed the eye test like crazy at plus 8,000. Maybe USC plus 6,500. They won Maui. This team can be really good. Now, they did get news. Rodney Rice is out for the season. However, he was playing like an all Big Ten caliber player, which just absolutely sucks for USC. However, Elijah Arenas is expected to return to practice this week. So they'll be, losing a stud and, gaining a stud, but kind of sucks for USC. Then Oklahoma can just really score the basketball, kind of like Georgia at plus 10,000 might be worth throwing $1 or $2 on. And then Dayton, like I said, they can also really score the ball. They've got a lot of talent for an A10 school at plus 12,000. I think that is kind of worth it. All right, so that is it. Those are all the future bets that I would, throw a couple bucks on, whether it's, national championship, or if you're trying to make, like, I put more on the conference win bets, like for Arkansas, North Carolina, Michigan, just a little bit more obviously confident in those, as they're much, not as much money coming back to you if you do end up winning those. So that's the future bets. We are going to preview this weekend of hoops, and I'll give a little bit more betting advice just in general, because Saturday's loaded, Sunday's also good. So let's talk about that real quick before getting out of here. Saturday, I know the college football playoff starts, but there's also a lot of college basketball going on. At 12:30 on CBS in the CBS Sports Classic, number 22 St. John's takes on Kentucky. These games are going to be played in Atlanta this season for the CBS Sports Classic. St. John's only favored by 1 at KenPom. In fact, they're right next to each other at KenPom. St. John's is 18th. Kentucky is 19th. However, I think St. John's is much better. I don't think this line will be like this. I think it'll lean St. John, or it'll bet up St. John's way. I'm going to take St. John's -1 if this is the line. 100%. I think St. John's is a great bet there. 2 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network, Colorado State and Utah State. This is going to be a really, really eye test pleasing game. Both teams can score the ball like crazy. Utah State favored by 7 in that one. I'm sure the line will probably end up about 6.5. Utah State last year played a lot of zone. Colorado State has shot the lights out to start this season, so I'm curious to see what that matchup looks like. I'm probably not going to bet it. 6.5, 7.5 seems about right in my opinion. 3 o'clock on CBS, the second game of the CBS Sports Classic. It's going to be North Carolina and Ohio State played in Atlanta. Once again, North Carolina ranked 12th in the country. They're favored by 3 via KenPom in this one. I lean heavy to North Carolina here. However, Ohio State does desperately need some wins, and that does mean something. Ohio State is like as bubble-ish of a team as you're probably going to find right now. I think North Carolina is much better, and their positional size should kill Ohio State. I think if North Carolina is able to shut down Bruce Thornton, they're going to win the game. However, this was a weird one last year. Remember in the CBS Sports Classic, Ohio State played Kentucky and beat them by like 20, and Kentucky was beating everyone badly at that point. So maybe Jake Diebler can get his team to show up. However, I think North Carolina, much better team. 4 o'clock on Peacock, Northwestern and Butler. Butler favored by 2 in this one. Butler coming off of a crazy game against Providence and then a loss against UConn. 4 o'clock Peacock. Don't really have a particular lean in this game. This game's going to be played. This is a neutral site game, but definitely leans more towards Butler. It's going to be played in Indianapolis, so right down the road from Butler. I'd lean Butler minus 2.5. Not heavy though. 5:30 on CBS. 2 teams I talked good about today. Number 8 Houston taking on number 14 Arkansas. This game is going to take place in Newark. So why Houston and Arkansas need to go all the way to Newark, I'm not 100% sure what's going on, but Houston is favored by 5 in this matchup. I'm going to stay away from it just because Houston, like I said, they're going to keep getting better and better. So they're a real dangerous team to bet against, or you're not sure if they're all the way there and you want to bet for them. I'm going to stay away from this one. I think both teams are really good. Wouldn't be surprised if this is a, Sweet 16 Elite 8 matchup come March Madness. At 6:30 on Peacock, number 21 Auburn taking on number 6 Purdue. Purdue favored by 8 in that one. Remember, Purdue got drilled. This is not at Mackey. This is also in Gamebridge. So some sort of event going on there because they're both on Peacock, Northwestern and Butler, the opening game, and then Auburn and Purdue right after that. So Purdue is favored by 8 in this one. We'll see about this one. I would lean Purdue minus 8. I think Auburn just can get beat badly. Quite frankly, sometimes. Who did they get beat badly by? I know they got drilled by Michigan and they got drilled by Arizona. So I think when they play really elite level offenses, I think it can get away from them quickly. So Purdue is an elite level offense. In fact, they're number 1 offense at KenPom. So I know it seems like a big number for 2 ranked teams. However, I would lean Purdue minus 8 in that one. 8 o'clock on ESPN, number 3 Duke taking on number 19 Texas Tech. This would be my 2 picks as your player of the year, as crazy as that sounds. I know Texas Tech, they just haven't been good enough, but in terms of best players and, kind of stat sheet stuffers, Cam Boozer and JT Toppin, that is an awesome matchup. This game's going to be played at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Number 3 Duke is favored by 8 in this matchup. Like I said on the last show, I'm not 100% sure what to think about Texas Tech yet. They lost a 4-point game to Illinois. They got beat by 30 to Purdue. They lost to Arkansas by 7. Duke is really good. However, I think just gut feeling Texas Tech sticks around in this one and just a, kind of prove yourself game. I know they beat LSU by 1 million on a neutral, but this is a big game for Texas Tech in terms of seeding. We know what Duke's going to be. They're going to be a 1 or 2 seed come March Madness. Texas Tech needs it. So I think they hang around and can cover 8 points in that one. And then finally on Saturday, we get San Diego State, who's been kind of just flying under the radar, hasn't really played anyone. Since the Players Era Festival. Arizona, number 1 team in the country, favored by 14. That seems like a lot of points against a San Diego State team that is always real physical. This game's going to be played in Phoenix. I don't know. 14 is so many points. I'm probably not going to bet this game, but Arizona is just so much more talented. They are so athletic. Toby Awaka and Mo Krivas are just awesome down low. So we'll see. 14, as crazy as it sounds, seems about fair. I know that's a ton of points, but I'm going to stay away from it. Moving on to Sunday, not as great of a slate. Pitt versus Penn State at 12 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. Both teams outside the top 100 in the country. Yikes. Penn State favored by 1 in that one. That's a neutral site game being played in Hershey, Pennsylvania. 1 o'clock on the CW, the always random ACC CW game where Wake Forest hosts Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt up to 10 at KenPom. They just beat Memphis this past yesterday from when I'm recording this in overtime. Vanderbilt looked like the better team, and then Doug McDaniel just popped off in the second half. But Vanderbilt is favored by 5 on the road in that one. This is a big one for Wake Forest. I think this is a really good spot for Wake Forest because they need some wins. They've kind of, just been hanging around. They're 55th at KenPom right now. They almost picked up some huge wins early in the season, then just haven't talked about them much. So this is a good opportunity for Wake Forest. We'll see if Vanderbilt can kind of rebound, because Vanderbilt really struggled with Memphis's pressure last night. We'll see if Wake Forest will, try and force that issue and really put a lot of ball, a lot of pressure on the ball in the backcourt. But we'll see. Vanderbilt's really good. Wake Forest, I'm going to stay away from it. 1:00 on ESPN. Two teams that are also in desperate need of a win: Ole Miss and NC State. Ole Miss, we haven't talked about much this year because they haven't been very good. They're 60th at KenPom. NC State 28th at KenPom. NC State's favored by 6 in this one. This game will be played in Greensboro, North Carolina, so not a true home game for NC State, but definitely will have the fan advantage there. 1:00 on TNT, Southern at Baylor. Baylor favored by 22. Southern the favorite in the SWAC. 3:00 on ESPN, Cincinnati at Clemson. Cincinnati did get Jizzle James back. He actually played pretty well. We'll see. Clemson favored by 8 in that matchup. I believe that game's it's in Greensville, South Carolina, so heavy favored towards Clemson. However, technically a neutral site game. 4:30 on FS1, number 5 UConn at DePaul. UConn favored by 13 on the road in that one. I think they win by more than 13, quite frankly. But, DePaul can be a little bit feisty. They're well coached under Chris Holtmann. 6:00 on Peacock. Number 7, Gonzaga taking on Oregon. This game will be played in Portland. Gonzaga favored by 14 via KenPom. That is what Oregon is this season. They're 79th at KenPom. Oregon does desperately need a victory. Will they show up? I don't know. Mark Few's such a good coach, and his team just always beats teams that they're better than, quite frankly. So we'll see about that one. But that's definitely a big spread. 6:00 on Peacock. Alrighty, that's going to do it for the show today. Just talking some future bets, talking the upcoming slate. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you enjoy more shows like this, be sure to like and subscribe, turn on the post notifications. A friendly reminder, our first bracketology episode will that be our next episode? Yes, that'll be our next episode, I believe. We might do a recap of Saturday's slate because it's so big. But be on the lookout for that bracketology. This will be our first one of the season. We'll talk about where it would stand right now. Do some bubble watch. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok to be reminded about all kinds of stuff, college basketball, at Bracket Science with 2 S's. If anyone's doing anything holiday-like this upcoming weekend, everyone have a great time. Enjoy your week. We'll talk to you about bracketology. The fun part of the season is coming up. We'll talk to you soon. Everyone take care.